The Christmas season is here. The Christmas holiday is right around the corner, just a few weeks away from the time of filming this video. And one of the things I love to do during the Christmas season, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have the same idea as me, is to watch the old classic Christmas movies from years past. And to me, the best way to watch those films and cartoons and whatever is not through streaming. It's through physical media. And here today, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk to you guys about why I think owning the physical media copies, whether it be on DVD or Blu-ray or VHS tape, for some of these classic Christmas movies is the way to go to watch all these kind of pieces of classical media. So let's talk about that here in this video today. Mainly what I want to talk about is why I think streaming media, while it's not bad, is a little bit inferior to having the physical copies for these classic Christmas films and cartoons and TV shows and stuff like that. Now, there's a few points I want to make here, but we'll start with the big one, which I think some people may already know, with this. Just in general, if you've read the news about different company mergers, of like Netflix trying to buy Warner Brothers and now Paramount trying to get in on the deal to try and, kind of get under Netflix and try and buy it out from under them, and just other companies being bought in the past over the last, 5-10 years of mergers and stuff. To me, the biggest point I want to make about this physical media versus streaming debate isn't really anything to do with like quality or anything like that. It's simply like price and availability. That's really what it comes down to, is the biggest one. I have a few smaller points I'll touch on in a second. But the biggest thing is price and availability. Because to watch all of the different films, especially with what I've got here, I don't have a whole huge stack here, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there's 7 in this collection. But we'll say, like about a dozen films here in this little stack that I have. If you wanted to watch all 12 of these movies that I have here, you would have to subscribe to like 5 or 6 different streaming services. And if you take an average of say $10 per streaming service, which isn't exactly the case. There's a few that are a little cheaper than $10. Some are right at $10 and a couple are a little more expensive, especially if you want to get higher tiered plans that don't have commercials and stuff in it, which is a whole nother debate in and of itself. But if you just want to take the $10 kind of baseline, very simple math kind of amount for this, if you had to say subscribe to 5 of the 6 streaming services just to watch these films, you're paying $50 for a month to try and watch all of these. And that's to say that those prices stay the same, that they don't get hiked up even higher, because that's been a trend in streaming services for the last couple years, especially the last like 12 months, 15 months, whatever, is that the prices of all these streaming services are just going up and up. They're constantly adding more pricing, tiers and just pricing changes and hikes to everything. So that is the biggest thing, is the price, but it's also the availability, because these movies are split over all these different kind of streaming services. And that's all due to like rights and buyouts of different companies. So if you want to watch the Charlie Brown holiday movies or cartoons, whatever, you've got to subscribe to Apple Plus or Apple TV or whatever it is, because that's exclusive to that kind of streaming platform. If you want to watch the classic animated movies that were made for TV, Rudolph, Santa Claus, Frosty the Snowman, all of these kind of classic animated movies here, you have to subscribe to, I think Apple has it, I think Amazon has it, and I know maybe a couple like free streaming sites like Freeform and stuff will have these airing periodically, but then you have to subscribe there to those. If you want to watch the actual Disney ones, you got to subscribe to Disney Plus and pay the appropriate, price that they're charging to watch these films, especially if we're only going to watch them maybe once or twice around the holidays. That's like, to me, just a crazy amount of money to spend. And for me, all of these films I have here, I've got, like I said, about a dozen, because there's 7 in this classic Christmas set that's here. But all of these that I have here between VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, I bought secondhand from thrift stores. And I spent about the same price as one streaming service. I paid about $10 total, maybe even less than that, for all of these movies here that I physically own the copy of now. And I paid about the price of 1 month streaming service to own all of these. And I can watch them whenever I want. So not only is price and availability through the streaming platforms probably the biggest factor for why I think physical media is the better way to go for these holiday classics, but it also has a nostalgic feel for me, especially and more importantly with VHS tapes. And that's because this is how I grew up watching most of these movies, unless I saw them airing live on TV back in the day, back in like the 80s and 90s. When I watched these, it was on VHS tapes. And while, like, say this one, this How the Grinch Stole Christmas, this is a newer release. This is from, I believe, like the early 2000s, or actually 1999, so right around 2000. This was a later release. I had an older version that was in kind of like this old school Warner Brothers kind of slip cover here. This is the version, I used to have for this of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But all these movies on VHS, that's a nostalgic factor for me because that's how I watched them growing up. And so there's a nostalgia factor with me, with that. But I also have, like I said, some DVDs and Blu-rays of these films as well, which are in a little bit better quality than the VHS tapes and, are still nice to watch, in my opinion. But for the most part, for pricing and availability, the fact that you have to pull from all these different streaming services and subscribe to 4, 5, 6 different platforms to watch all of these different movies, where for the same price as streaming for 1 month, you could buy all of these at a thrift store, especially used copies, which is another last point I'll make before I end the video. The used copies, like all of these I bought at a thrift store, as I said a minute ago, at least in my area, most of these movies are like $2 or less a piece. Where some bigger cities maybe you're looking like, $3, $4, $5 maybe at some thrift stores, wherever it may be that you kind of shop for that stuff. But for me, around here, these type of movies, especially the VHS tapes and these DVDs and stuff, they're like flooded everywhere, especially this time of year in the holiday kind of season. But even non-holiday kind of like seasons in the summer and spring and stuff, these movies are like always flooded everywhere at these thrift stores. And so you can find most, if not all of this stuff, at least in my area, pretty regularly and pretty easily. And you're going to save a ton of money, and then you own it. And you don't have to worry about the platform no longer carrying it, or a merger where something gets bought out and now you don't have the movie on a platform, or the price hike where you were paying $10, now you've got to pay 12 or 15 to watch it, next year around the Christmas season, where you could buy these, you own them, and they're here and you can watch them whenever you want. So to wrap everything up, the big point I want to make is go out and buy your physical media copies of these classic movies, whether it's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, A Christmas Story, whether it's the Christmas classic animated movies, animation ones with Rudolph and, Santa Claus and all that sort of stuff. Go out and buy the physical media versions because you're going to spend less money in the long run, and it's always going to be there. You don't have to worry about being removed from platforms and price hikes and all this stuff. And in the case of, like I said, with VHS tapes, especially if you're a little bit older, there's a certain nostalgic, sentimental kind of value to taking this and popping this into a VCR and watching it, around the Christmas tree in a living room with your family and friends, or down in a home theater like here during the holiday season. And with that, we are at the end of the video here today. Definitely leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on physical media versus streaming. Like I said, I know I've talked about this in the past. I know there's other content creators that have talked about it, but definitely let me know if you prefer streaming films, and movies and shows, not just Christmas stuff like this, but in general, or if you rather have the physical copy. Because for me, as much as I know there's an ease of use to streaming, I would much rather own physical copies of these films and have them in my collection to watch anytime I want. And let me know also if you're a little bit older, or maybe someone who's younger who's gotten into the hobby, if you like watching older VHS tapes and if you have a nostalgic value to watching these classic Christmas movies on VHS. And with that, we're done. I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you as always. If you like the content, consider liking and subscribing, all that good stuff that we always, say here in YouTube land. Thank you so very much. And I will see you again, hopefully pretty soon before the holiday season is up. And I will see you in the next video right here on Secondhand Home Theater. Thank you.